assistant. Some of the other issues that I wanted to address at the school are how discipline is administered, particularly with bullying and drugs. I'm told that also there is no longer a dress code, and that was never communicated to us as parents. As a parent, I'm wondering why these scenarios exist in our school. We are more than halfway through the school year, and our granddaughter lost a whole year of learning because there is no math teacher. If the district is doing computer-based classes, information should be sent home to parents informing them that their child's in a computer-based class with a complete description of the course and responsibilities of the class, of the student. The other issue I had with this is why were there more students than computers in the class? Didn't the administrators know there weren't enough computers? As for the algebra class, if the school does not have a licensed teacher for a specific class, parents should be informed of that as well. As a school district, I think I hear that school districts want our schools to be successful and our children to be successful, but these two situations with the math classes contradict that. All these point to setting our children up for failure. As for the social problems, one of the most common problems in our society is how families are afflicted with domestic violence issues. Our children come from many different environments and bring those to school. It's very discouraging when it appears that students are not encouraged to model positive behaviors, and discipline is not enforced when a student violates policies. It's also very discouraging when, as a parent, your concerns are pushed aside and not addressed appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jeff. Our next speaker would be Jeff James, Jr.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff James. I just wanted to talk in front of the board about some concerns that I dealt with at Taru High School. I'm a C-team coach there for the boys. And there was some stuff that arose there, that how I was treated by the principal, Mr. Romero, the athletic director, Mr. Spencer. I was treated like I would just put underneath the rug. There was a lot of issues that was hidden to the people, and there's a lot of stuff that I heard from the varsity coach talking about the parents and the children, the kids that played for him. And there's some remarks that he made to some female students there that needs to be addressed. When you say personnel, I need to understand what you mean by personnel issue.
Anything you stated there is considered a personnel issue and would be related between Mr. Chapetti as well as any personnel in the district that is paid from the district.
Or
So,
like anything with the district?
yeah.
Okay.
So it kind of would, I would stop you there as well, because it would be related to the superintendent. And so if you want, you can go ahead and set a meeting with him and discuss person to person with him on that issue.
I did that a couple times, and he wouldn't return my calls or my message with you. I even have it documented with the front lady there.
There's a formal complaint going on, and you can't overstep level 1 to level 3. There was a complaint at the time filed, and I cannot supersede going from level 3 to level 1. We
Okay.
retain the due process, but that complaint is now over, so I would be happy to meet.
Okay. All right.
So there'll be a meeting set up with you. I believe you have a number with the superintendent. Okay. Okay. Well, he'll set it with you right now. So, thank you, Mr. James. With that, we do have our one of our member of nomination council here, Honorable Edmund Yazzie here.
Chair and board members, and to our guests in the boardroom here, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Chair. And just for the record, my name is Edmund Yazzie and represent 6 chapters within the Eastern District, which is the Rue, Smith Lake, Mariano Lake, Pinedale, Church Rock, and Yamato. And if I may, Chair and board members, I wish Mr. Chipetti was here to hear this, but I know it's for the record. But a month ago, parents had confronted the chapter, in which the chapter had passed a couple of resolutions, Chair and board members. This is in reference to, and of course, speaking on behalf of our children, speaking on behalf of our parents of Thorough High. And this is about racial profiling, which is being conducted. And Chair, I do have 2 documents that I want to give to you and leave that to you and with the board and to see what your follow-up or your comments would be on what is happening within Thorough. I, Chair and board members, have a nephew who goes to school at Thorough High, and he has told me times, and along with our children, that staff, and I'll say this, staff are making racial statements such as putting the traditional belief down with our kids. For an example, the basketball season. And one of the coaches had indicated and stated that where is all the Navajos' corn pollen, you know, when we need help with our team. And to me, Chair and board members, that is not right. And I see the banners that are here in your room, and I wish we had these same banners in the council floor too as well. But I talk, you know, one is caring, citizenship, but when students come to you and say this, and when it's in writing, Chair, it really disturbs, you know, our young kids. And we are all one in as far as, you know, when it comes to race. And so when the parents brought this up, of course, we do understand the personnel issue is a high matter that we need to take a look into, but this is one of the situations that I cannot just turn away. And so I would trust the board that they would do a follow-up, and I would gratefully ask the board to report back to the Thorough chapter and just indicating the reassurance of our kids of being safe and without being bullied, if you will, with these kind of statements. And so, and with that comment, Chair, I would ask once again. I know I do understand, and when it, like I said, when it comes to personnel issues here, but this is, you know, I don't want to read the letter here because of the more harsher, you know, statements that has been said, and I'll give that to you, Chair, and once again let you decide. But in closing here, I know you have a long agenda on your a lot of items on your agenda tonight, and but in closing too, I wanted to also share some wariness, if you will, on our seniors within our high schools. Last year, this time, I heard a lot of our counselors, particularly in Thorough, where counselors had failed to notify students that they are graduating. And in one case, a Smith Lake family had bought graduation, you know, event such as food. They had a graduation event back at their home, had purchased food and had purchased gifts, but the student was later told that, you know, he couldn't graduate. And when that's the case, then really, technically, you know, the school is to blame. And I would really stress that all our counselors would look out for all our seniors within our school and to make sure they graduate. And so this is what brings me here, Chair, tonight, and I'm grateful that I have this time to speak, and I have nothing else to say on this important matter. But I would request, I would like a follow-up, you know, on this racial statements. It's got to stop. I mean, we cannot let our kids go through this. And we, as I was indicated, we are all one. I'm not going to say names of staff, of course, but it's got to stop. And so, Chair and board members, I would encourage you to really look into this matter not only through, but with other schools too that might have to go through this issue within among our students. Thank you, Chair and board members.
Thank you, Honorable Yazzie, and I definitely will do follow up on that. With that, we do have our next speaker, Ms. Jim Martin.
Good evening, school board members, superintendent, and audience. She'ayas and lots of Jim Martin yadishya. Tana betlin shlal adna abashichin adna dashnalado ashihed dashiche. I am a parent of the community of Tohatchi and Twin Lakes, and this evening I would like to introduce you to some Tohatchi mid-school students who would like to share some words with the board members. This group of young people, there are more who could not make it tonight, have a huge interest in changing their school dress code. And these young ladies and some young men who are a part of student council and a part of the school community have done their own research and have looked into how they can create changes like this in their own school. So they researched how to do this, and they pulled together a petition and asked community members, parents, grandparents, other students to sign a petition to get the school dress code changed. And I'm very proud of all of them. They did this on their own, so they're very courageous, and I'm very honored to be able to introduce them as a parent. We did bring this attention to our school board member, Kevin Mitchell, and he is aware of the desire of these young people to change the dress code. And on that note, yesterday we did have a community forum in Tohatchi where we did have our principals join us from the schools as well as Superintendent Chipetti. We thank you for being there. We didn't have a large attendance, but at least we were able to meet with the principal at the mid-school, and he was able to tell us that he is willing to work with us and these young people in changing the school dress code policy. So I'd like to give them some time to quickly introduce themselves.
Yat Eshe Janabama in Unisia, Tina Bithni Ishle, Na Kai Bushishi, at London Air, they should say Topahan Deshanale, Tuflagai de Nasha. Hi, I'm Najoni. I am the 6th grade representative in student council at TMS.
She Najoni Biani and Shan Anastasia the Nae the Slatats on the air bushes teen. Toda cheatney dashiche, tet cheatney dashanala, akoteg with Sikain Nishla, Shmandosh is at A. Artie and Daryl Bialwaya. I'm in 8th grade and I attend Tohatchi Mid School. I am an 8th grade representative in student council.
Hi, my name is Cameron Dawes, and my plans are Ashi Nishlan Tohane Bashashi Tachini Dashache Benatani Dashinella, and I'm an 8th grade representative at Tohatchi Mid School, and my parents are Fernanda Dawes and Kimberly Ozzie.
Some reasons that we want to change the dress code is because some kids cannot afford these school uniforms, and most kids wear one pair of clothes each day.
Well, another reason that we to change dress code is usually the school and teachers teach us and kind of motivate us to be ourselves and to express ourselves, and usually they don't give us that full exposure to do that because they tell us what to wear and what not to wear. And to most students that's unfair because most of us are not like we don't have the money to buy clothes every year or every month, and the school also teaches us that we have to do good in education, and right now they make a big deal out of not really focusing on our education. They're mainly focusing on what we wear and the style of it. And from that, our education is kind of slowly drifting away because most teachers and the principals are just focusing on what we're wearing instead of what we're learning. Thank you.
Another reason is that why do these other Gallup McKinley County schools have no dress code, but some other certain schools have dress code? Why can't we just all have the same dress code as the other schools? And why, and most importantly, we get in trouble mostly all day throughout the whole year about dress code. And like Najoni said, the most thing teachers focus on is our dress code, not our education.
One more reason is because there's 3 schools at Tohatchi, and we're middle school, and we're the only ones who have a dress code, not the high school and not the elementary. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job, ladies.
Thank you. We'll certainly have Mr. Mitchell follow up on that. So, next guest speaker, public comment this evening is Ms. Hardy.
Good evening. My name is Renee Hardy, and I'm a parent. I have 2 boys at Navajo Pine High School, and I have a younger son at Navajo Elementary. This evening, I come before you again and ask for your assistance, not to help me. I'm not asking you to fix our school. I'm asking for your assistance to help me and lead me in the right direction so I can get other parents involved in improving little steps, baby steps, our high school. I came to you before, and I want to let you guys know you have 2 outstanding staff here in the district office. One is Ms. Pauletta White, and the other is Rachel Rodriguez. Every issue that I've had, all I ever had to do was pick up the phone. If they weren't able to answer my phone call, they called me back that same day. So thank you very much. And this evening, I'd like to speak about the teachers at the high school. We do have long-term subs, and I am actually kind of disappointed in a couple of things at our school. And one thing that I really want to bring up is holding our athletic coaches accountable. Accountable in holding our students and pushing them academically, not physically, not athletically, academically, to do their best in class, attend class. We've had issues with our high school teams where staff would call the coach, email the coach, have a complaint about a student, and for a whole year since basketball season started, we had one individual, a teacher, and we need this teacher. I believe she teaches English. We had an athlete disrupt her class many, many times, and all our coach would say, well, it's classroom management, classroom management. And we had a staff member give me a call and say, Renee, maybe you can talk to the parent. Maybe you can talk to the coach. We've tried talking to the coach because there was a contract that we had to sign as an athlete and as the parent. And one of the main things that was pushed was academics. And when that fell through, there wasn't really anything that we could stand on, because I, as one, pushed my boys, I think, to the limit. Because, again, every morning they get up, they drive themselves to UNM, attend classes at UNM, and drive back to Navajo. We do that. And, yeah, I have my senior. He's kind of lazy right now, but still yet he makes the grade. He wakes up every morning and he finishes the same way at 3:28. I believe that's when they get out. But tonight I'm asking you to help in changing certain things. We lost a good cross-country coach to Theroux this year. He did amazing, amazing stuff with our students. And I thought this year we were going to have an awesome coach. And he started out really good with our basketball program. But it seemed like more so it was more not mentoring, not pushing, not listening to what the child needs, the student needed. It was more so on the athletic side of it. And I'd like to ask for your help in changing that for the upcoming sports. We have baseball. And it's kind of, we have a really good teacher. He didn't want us to cancel our whole season. He volunteered to take the coaching program. And this evening I went there because my boys were that was their first day of practice. And he goes, Renee, I'm going to be honest with you. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I said, it's okay, it's okay. I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know the sport. But there are individuals that are more than willing to assist the students before becoming an athlete, stepping on that court, stepping on that field. Let's make the change to continue to hold these coaches accountable, especially with the academic part of it. No more just, well, you know, we talked. No. They get paid, I'm sure they do. And we as parents do our part in trying to get them to make the grade. And if we continue to work at pushing the coaches, maybe the coaches can turn that around and help us parents push certain students that need just that little push, that little knowledge, or that, how would you say it, encouragement. Not to be a better athlete, but to be a better student. And then I'd like to ask, well, he's not here this evening, Mr. Mitchell, if we could arrange to have a community meeting, because I know there's parents in Navajo that would like to express their concerns. And one other thing that I'd like to bring up to the board is at the Navajo Elementary, we have long-term subs. And we had a community meeting at the elementary, and the one question I asked the principal there, and I said, do these long-term subs attend the meetings on Monday? And I did my homework prior to me asking her this, because we had a long-term sub in the 3rd grade, and that's the grade my son's in. And she looked at me right, and she calmly said, she goes, yes, it's mandatory. And I kind of smiled and I said, yeah, right. Just be honest with me. But it was a good question, because now they all attend these meetings. We just really need to work together, and I'm willing to do the legwork if need be. I have one more year next year at the high school. I have one more son who's a junior this year. And then I don't know what else to tell you. I keep saying, let's push it, let's push it. I'm no longer asking for you as the board to fix our high school. I'm asking for your assistance and helping us and move in that direction. If one parent can get the ball rolling, I'm sure the community will jump right in and start helping and rolling this ball in the right direction and get teachers and students all on board. Again, I want to thank you for hearing me out this evening, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hardy. Our last, our last speaker, public comment, we have the Honorable former Navajo Nation President, Mr. Ben Shelley.
I'd like to say good evening to the board, school boards, and nice to see you all. You're getting prettier than I am now, you know, so as old age gets on us, we change a lot, so we just have to deal with that. You know, I'd like to make a comment, kind of want to repeat what Honorable Edmund Yazzie has said about the RU, but let me just broaden it a little bit, that our elderly's back in Theru, the community, the Navajo Nation, they had a vision that they would educate their kids somewhere. And I know then McKinley County School, they're all saying that they can't all come to Gallup, all the way from Theru. The transportation, bus, and everything costs so much. So they had to find school in different areas like Theru, Crown Point, Tohachi, and other areas. I think those are the vision that they've seen that we could accommodate by leasing our land to the McKinley County School. And they have done that. They follow that, and they still vision that. And we have all of our kids, our grandkids, my kids all went to school Theru. They finished their school. One dropped out, but again, we all go through those things, you know, but he made up for it. But anyway, Theru is our school. That's where I live. I live right across from Theru. And I'm very proud of our Hawk. And I really lacking, I believe that we're really lacking a good coach. And that's what we're lacking. Our kids are getting way down. They can't even make regions anymore. But I'm hoping to see that we get some qualified coach in there. I'd like to say that this name calling that I hear a lot around the school is uncalled for. I don't know what it is, but people out there tends to duplicate or copycats. I think Santa Fe went through that, and I don't think we, as board members, you here shouldn't take that. Should make it clear that we don't copycat anything. We over here, we're all mixed, and we should get along together and don't teach our other kids, the one that's there now, to hate another kid with a different color or different whatever nationality. And that's where everything starts. When you let that get out of hand, you're going to start having wars. Kids don't back out. And I don't think you want to have that in your hands. So one of the things, the parents is the bottom of this. A lot of parents teach their kids to be racist. And I think some of those you probably see. I see a lot of them, the parents themselves. So they're the cause of some of these. The other thing is, I wanted to, sometime back, I don't know if I was involved, we gave a Navajo Nation flag to Gallup here. And when I go to the ball game, I go to the bingo game, almost every, the girls and the boys, I'm proud of those boys. They'll be going to state, and I'll be over there too, the girls and boys, and supporting them. But when I go to the gym, I look up, I see the American flag and a POW, but where's the Navajo Nation flag? You know, so these are things that a lot of us Navajos don't like. And we're surrounding the school. Our kids are there. So I sure like to have that thing back in there. I don't know who brought it down, but I don't see Navajo Nation flag in there. So I'm appealing to you, board, to bring that back up there so we now know who we are. You know, also we have we represent our nation in that gym too. So with that, the last thing I want to say is this racist thing. The reason why I'm saying it is I lived it. I finished school in Snowflake, Arizona. That's all I had is racist. In the weekend, we had fights every weekend. You see some scars on me on that. So, and we've done that. And I don't want to see that here with the younger generation like these three that said their word here. I don't want them hurt. And I think you need to be very, very careful with those, what's going on in school pertaining to racism and name calling. Thank you for allowing me to be here. And thank you again.
Thank you, Honorable Ben Shelley. We do have one final speaker this evening for public comment. That will be Rebecca Jim.
Hey, my name is Rebecca Jim. I am originally from Ardmore, Oklahoma. I have been in Standing Rock area for 3 years now. I have 2 young boys that go to Crown Point Mid and 1 to Crown Point High. Yes, I am an outsider, I guess you could say, but as coming here, I see how the kids' education is very lack of. We do not have the high school education needed for these kids to make it outside of the reservation. I feel that they need to know that they can go to college somewhere else if they want to, not just around here. They have no vocational trades at Crown Point High School to get them ready in case they don't go to college. The principal changes every couple of months. I don't understand that. How can you set anything and get anything started to change if you're always changing principals? Teachers don't even stay, or you're always having subs. And the subs don't even know what kind of, they're not educated in that, let's say English or math. You know, they're just there to hand out a worksheet. 35 kids in one class. My son has ADHD. He has not had a 504 plan the whole time we've been here. Accommodations were not being met. And there's a stack of kids that have 504 that's not even being met. That is a situation. My kids, yes, they play good in sports, but drugs, fighting, kids coming off of, it's not even high school, coming to the campus, I'm sorry, that's 21 and above wanting to fight on campus. I'm appalled. And our grade level as an education was what, a D? I want to be able to help the school because I feel if we help our school, we won't have to send our kids somewhere else to get the education. Then that money can be put towards the community to build up the community. I want help. I want to help. There's a lot of other parents because my kids, they do have a dream to go to OU, LSU, and they're not going to be able to get that with the education they're getting there. Please help. I know there's probably other parents that feel that way too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jim. That concludes our public comments. We'll continue on now to the approval of the minutes. Board members, we do have 2 sets of minutes before you. The first one is for February 16, 2016, which is our regular minutes. Following that is our February 17, 2016 work session minutes. Board members.
Mr. President,
Mr. Heidemann.
I want to make a comment about the complexity of summarizing long meetings in a page or two. When I read the minutes, I think it's difficult to capture all the details and capture all the details totally accurately. And I say that to remind people that if there are questions about anything, the minutes are recorded now, as I think has happened for some months, so that there is a more total record. But I say that just because I see some things in the minutes that I don't call them errors, but there are details and nuances that can't be all captured and summarized. And just being aware of that, so if the public ever has questions, we do have something to go back now to clarify such questions. But with that said, I move approval of the, I didn't reopen the page, the first set of minutes, February 16, thank you.
Okay,
Go through them.
thank you, Mr. Heeneman. Mr. Heeneman motions to approve February 16, 2016 regular meeting minutes. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. For that, we'll continue on now to our work session minutes. Board members.
Mr. President,
Mr. Menini.
there's a lack of a board member present, and his name is in the minutes, and that's Lynn Huneman. He was left off of the members present.
The first part of the minutes, I believe we skipped Mr. Heeneman's name was present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Menini. With that, board members, do we have a motion to, with that change?
With that, I move the minutes of the special meeting on the 17th be approved.
Motion by Ms. Menini to approve the work session minutes for February 17, 2016. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes. With that, we'll continue on now to item 4 on the agenda, which is the approval of consent agenda items. I believe we do have a slight change on one part of the finance part. Ms. Hanks?
Mr. Nez, President Nez, board members, and Superintendent Chipetti, the Public Education Department notified me earlier this week about a policy change regarding rounding in cents. So the award letters that we get always have change on them as far as the dollar amounts, and previous to now they've always asked us to truncate that dollar amount to ensure that there's not an over expenditure, but they're now asking us to round up. They notified me of that earlier this week. So on the Title I carryover, instead of $79 at the very end, it needs to be $80, so that when we submit that into the operating budget management system, or the OBMS, our dollar amount will match the template that they have. And again, the award letter was for 79 cents. Typically it's a truncating feature, but they've now changed their practice. Thank you.
Question. Going on to your financial sections, was a operational bill sent to us for approval for outstanding bills?
Yes, sir. You should have received that from Janice Lewis. Okay, if she's not showing up, I know that I spoke with Janelle earlier today, and we did re-forward that to you. So if she's going to your trash, please let me know, or maybe check her as an approved in your email.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, we did receive the operation bills on Thursday last week. With that, board members, do we have any other questions, concerns on the matter?
Mr. President, I move the consent agenda items be approved with the exception of R to be an action item.
Motion by Mr. Menini to approve the consent agenda items with the exception of R. Roll call, please.
Yes.
I just have one question, sir. What is WIDA?
WIDA is the testing for any students who speak in language other than English in the home.
Roll call.
I'm sorry, yes, Mr. Nance.
Yes. With that, we'll continue down now to an action item that we had mentioned here. That would be under new business 8. I, the approval of award resolution for a bond sale.
President Nez, board members, Superintendent Chipetti, members of the audience, I'm very thankful to have with us this evening Paul Cassidy from RBC Capital Markets. Also Art Melendres from Module Sperling. They're both helping us in facilitating this bond sale. And I believe you were given a presentation earlier by Mr. Cassidy, and I'm going to turn it over to him to kind of discuss what happened this morning at our bond sale.
Thank you, Ms. Hanks. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Trippetti, and audience members. This morning we received interest rate bids on the final $7,750,000 of general obligation bonds that voters had approved 3 years ago. This is the final sale of a $26 million voter-approved bond issue. The interest rates are summarized in a presentation that I did pass out, but what I'd like to report is that 7 different bidders from across the country participated in the competitive interest rate setting process, and the best bid that was submitted was from Wells Fargo at a 1.64% interest rate. The bonds are a 13-year final maturity, fixed rate, and will complete the authorization that voters approved. So this is the final action item, members of the board, to take tonight. What it does is approve the interest rate bids that was received, the best bid being Wells Fargo. After this, the action would be necessary would be to sign closing documents, and then in about 30 to 35 days, cash is in the bank for your facility folks to use it for voter-approved projects. I did want to spend a moment on future planning. The district has had, and historically, if you look back over the last 30 to 40 years, a bond election about every 4 years to deal with facility master planning, the process. The next election that is scheduled, subject to, of course, your board action, would be to have an election in February of 2017 to continue with the facility master plan funding, a competitive process to bring all your facilities up to standards so that every school across the district has a facility that in an equal condition. And that election size can be approximately $25 million without a tax rate increase. It's a little early to get started on that, but that would be something you would be considering doing in the late summer, early fall. So I just want to say that before going on. With me is Art Melendres, and before I turn it over to Art, he's your bond attorney. He's prepared the legal documents to approve this. We're your financial advisors. We dealt with getting an official statement prepared that describes the district as an investment credit to people who want to bid on your bonds, and also to get a Moody's rating in place. And I just want to report the president and the board that the district's bond rating was Moody's A1, which is on the higher end of the A category, and you had a team of your district administration that did present to the rating agencies and did a great job. And I just want to congratulate the board and the district on how you've managed your finances. You've built your cash balances to a level that is financially very satisfactory, and the rating agencies so indicated that in their opinion. Their opinion is contained in the presentation that I did pass out to you earlier. I'd be happy to stand for questions that you might have before turning it over to Mr. Melendres.
Mr. President.
Mr. Menini.
I want to thank you for your comments to us, but without your help and Mr. Melendres' help, we'll be in the red instead of in the black. And thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate it. And Ms. Hanks, who stands behind you all the time.
They've done a fabulous job, Mr. Menini, so thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members, President Nez, Superintendent. I have brought, and Joan has passed out, the final resolution. We had sent you a draft earlier, but the resolution before you now has the interest rates filled in from your low bidder, Wells Fargo. And also in front of you in this resolution is a description of the bond itself that will be issued to the Wells Fargo company, and also There are a lot of words, but I can summarize them briefly to say that if you adopt this resolution, you as a board are agreeing to comply with the Internal Revenue Code with regard to issuing tax-exempt bonds, and you're also agreeing to comply with the Securities and Exchange Commission regulations for providing your audited financials to a national database. The rest of this resolution, although very detailed, describes how the bond purchaser is going to be paid over time. We have a company which facilitates that, which is Bank of Albuquerque Trust Company, and we have included, as you can see, the interest rates. I would stand for any questions, but I want to reemphasize what Mr. Cassidy said. The bid that you received today of 1.6% to borrow $7+ million is really, really a great bid, and it's a testimony to your staff and the superintendent and you board members for exercising your careful fiduciary duties. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them about the resolution. Otherwise, I will turn it back to the superintendent for a recommendation about the resolution.
Mr. Heuneman?
Was Wells Fargo the only bidder, or how many bidders were there?
No, Mr. President, there were seven bidders. Wells Fargo was the low bidder. The others, if you don't have that, I can read SunTrust, Robinson Humphrey, FTN Financial Capital Markets, Robert W. Baird and Company, Piper Jaffray, George K. Baum, and Hilltop Securities. These are all national companies which bid on tax-exempt securities and facilitate the placement with their customers.
Thank you. I do apologize.
No,
I
that's
was
all
looking
right.
on the wrong page.
It's good information. This is very, very strong number of bidders and a great interest rate. The final thing I'll say before the superintendent takes over, I have left several signature pages. We would ask at some point that the president and secretary sign the documents for us, and then Joan, if you can just mail them to me maybe, or whatever works best for you guys. If you have nothing else, I give it back to you, sir, for a recommendation.
And I'll just add to Mr. Melendez's comments. As your independent financial advisor, we do recommend that you do accept the best bid. It's representative of the market and really, quite frankly, through the market, so it's a big difference.
Recommendation from our superintendent.
I'd like to actually start with a big thank you to the staff, Mr. Melendez and all, and then our staff, Ron Triplehorn, Mike Hyatt, Giovanna Haynes. A lot of times fiscal gets criticized, gets finger pointed at. They're the bad people. They don't let us spend money. They don't get to do this, but they don't realize everything they're doing. We're in an economy that has lost coal mine, lost the natural gas plant or the oil plant out here, and we've replaced these great industries with 5 motels. And if it wasn't for their hard work, bringing our federal grants in line, our great bond rating, our audits where we're showing, our program managers are doing a great job now, along with them. So with their hard work, I would definitely recommend passage.
There's a recommendation by Mr. Chiappetti to pass this resolution. I also want to say thank you to our financial advisors for doing a heck of a job for us, as well as our finance department here in the school district. When I saw the copy here a bit ago, I was excited to see that we have funding now for our school. So I'm very thankful for it as well. With that, do I have any other comments? Mr. Menini?
I have one comment, and I move the passage of this resolution.
Mr. Menini moves to approve the resolution. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Board, and thank you, Paul and Art, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. With that, board members, we do have an executive session at this point in time. Do I have a motion to go into executive session? Motion by Ms. Melita to go into executive session. The board will meet on limited personnel matters related to the employees as permitted under Section 10-15-I H2 and threaten or pending litigation related to a hearing on former Gallup McKinley County School employee case as permitted under Section 10-15-I H7 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Maglito to come out of executive session. The board only met unlimited personnel matters related to employees as permitted under section 10-15-1H2 and threaten or pending litigation related to a hearing on former Gallup McKinley County School employee case as permitted under section 10-15 I-H7 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. Roll call, please.
Mr. Heineman?
Yes.
Mr. Manini?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Nez?
Yes. Okay, we'll continue on now to study circle, superintendent's reports.
All the kids left. Everybody left. The National Board people left. The Lincoln people left. EDC left.
Would anybody like to have an award? Do we want to put them to the next meeting?
Let's see. See who's still here.
Superintendent's reports.
We will put the recognition at the next board meeting. Ms. Lundstrom's not here, so we'll skip that one. Wow, that's going quicker than I figured. I was asked to do a follow-up report on the last work session we had on Theroux, and it's really early to be saying what we can do next year. We had the recommendations from people who presented. They had different ideas. Counseling, possibly more counselors, different looks at such as those, liaisons, different things. But again, without our unit value, we don't really know what we can do next year. So we have those ideas on the board in our budget process, and we would really be able to give you a better report probably in about a month and a half about where we sit, where we go. We'll be getting probably the unit value first part of April, and so the second board meeting in April would be a better time to give the report on that. Yes, sir.
Mr. President, may I ask a question while we're on that item? In that work session on Theroux, we heard about this concerns about security, and I think that was meaning also coverage by Navajo Nation police being more quickly responsive and available. And then tonight, referencing Crown Point, we heard about people over age coming onto campus, and I'm wondering if it's still not appropriate to, I think we all know that Navajo Nation police, like a lot of things, at times understaffed. And then at the same time, I've driven down I-40 over by Elk and Pine Springs, turnoffs and so on, and there'll be a Navajo Nation police car sitting in the median, and I don't know why the state doesn't. I mean, that's a interstate highway. Why do they have to spend their time on that when we as schools don't get a quick response to calls? And it's not unique to what we've heard. I've experienced that in the past as an administrator, not too many years ago. So I'm just thinking, instead, it's easy to point fingers and say they don't come, and then it's easy to say, well, but they're shorthanded. But at the same time, maybe they could use both support and some pressure. I mean, in terms of, in the long run, funding, again, from their sources, and in terms of personnel, and so on. But I mean, because again, these things are not to be taken lightly. If you got 21-year-olds coming onto a high school campus, and we're hearing things about drugs and so on, well, sometimes we get numb to that because it's so common in our society nowadays. But I'm thinking at some point, if there's a way that us trying to address that, both to get better service, but also maybe in a way that helps them support expanding their capabilities. So I'm just raising that follow-up thought.
Thank you. And I know Mr. Schuster last year was really looking into grants on the post 9/11 grants that were increasing police officers in different areas. And we had worked with the Sheriff's Department, Navajo Nation Police Department to write grants to see if they could get extra funding for to add officers that would primarily be school resource officer type. And unfortunately, that money went into more, I think, heavy equipment for regular police departments. They needed the tanks and stuff like that for riot control. So we're still continuing to look at safety grants and such like that to do our part to help them. We've also reached out for offering offices for substations. At one point, State Police actually used several of our buildings for a substation back when gas was getting way up close to $3, a little over $3 a gallon, and they were limiting the number of miles the police department could travel. So they were using some of our buildings for substations. So we might be able to reach out to the Navajo Police to do the same thing. Might be viable in Tohatchee and Theru. Crown Point might be a little more difficult for them since they're probably already within several miles of the substation already. But we can reach out for that also. Thank you.
Mr. Tripetti, excuse me. How about the one time we were kind of discussing also having police in our teacherages at a discounted rate? Is that also something that is doable?
We looked at it. Unfortunately, the way our revenue bonds were passed to build those teacherages, I guess it was the New Mexico Finance Board, who we financed these through, has a clause in those bonds that says they can only be used for pretty much teachers, the educational personnel. So once we pay off these teacherages, yes, we can. Until we pay it off, we'd be violating our bonds.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. District and school website directories. Been asking schools to get a handle on this. So we got to looking at it. It was a bigger job than we found. The way those were put into the web, the individuals had to set up their own account and then update their account. Of course, if you leave, you don't delete your own account, and we never did. So as I was looking at it, I told them, we have these wonderful reports from our STARS team, our team that reports to all of our data to the state. And the massive amount of data that we report on our students and staff, I guarantee we had staff names, email addresses, and phone numbers. So they put together a spreadsheet for every school, and instead of putting every individual name as an individual click, you now click on the directory and that spreadsheet comes up, so you have access to it. I'm going to say at this point we're a little over 50% done. I put out a schedule of wanting at least 2 of the smaller schools or 1 large school every day being inputted, 4 days a week, with the 5th day to catch up, just in case we taxed our PR department with other activities going. And I'm going to say we have kept on schedule. We're actually ahead of schedule. So good job, Terry's department. So we should be done with that by end of this month. I'm assuming we will be 100% up to date. The directories will include every person at the school.
And what about district websites on districts? I went there today, and you have people that's resigned and still on there. Some people that's been hired and they're not on there.
We're finishing up with the schools, and then our district will be the next week.
The reason why I'm with the schools. I went to my schools to find out when they were having a student of the month, and of my 5 elementary schools, only 2 had it. Any information whatsoever. So I did not attend those.
This was brought up last Thursday at the principals meeting. I gave several examples of some wonderful activities that went on the week before that we would have loved to attend it, that I didn't even know about. Nice play. Me and Mary put on a play next door at Kennedy. There were several others. Even central office isn't even aware of it. So once again, Ms. Frazier has reached out to them. I've already seen the email that she put out at the beginning of this week, or at the end of last week. You know, give me for the next 2 weeks your activities. Just email them to me, and then she's putting them together and disseminating them out to everybody. Seems like the more publicity, the more response you'd have, the better it'd be. So we're trying to convince our principals of that. Next one is P-Cards and Activity Fund update. Ms. Hanks would love to give a quick update on this huge project. Huge project.
So we've created the infrastructure to create district purchase cards for the student activity funds. We have selected Bank of America as a state contracted vendor for this project. They currently have a state contract that is available on the Department of Finance's site, and that's the contract that we'll be utilizing to get the purchase cards. What we're looking at doing is consolidating all of our individual 35 bank accounts, student activity fund accounts, into one district account. And what will essentially happen is, instead of each school site having their own checkbook with a check that the principal would sign, they would be issued purchase cards. Those purchase cards will have with them, each individual who is issued a purchase card will receive training on how to utilize the card. They'll receive training on how to reconcile the items that they purchase. Any items that are purchased will require a district purchase order be issued prior to the purchase happening, and also in the Bank of America system there's a requisition workflow that will be issued. So those 2 items will be tied together, and then the individual will be able to go to the vendor and purchase. What this will be able to do for our school district is really open up several vendors that do not currently take purchase orders. It will also retain at the school site the availability of making small purchases very quickly. But what it will do is it'll allow greater oversight at the central office level for us to make sure that these purchases are in compliance. With that, the Student Activity Fund Handbook, it has been revised to align with the new purchase card policies. The purchase card policy does have various assurances in it that will be signed by the individual who's receiving a purchase card. This has been a project that has taken us a considerable amount of time because we want to be very thoughtful in it, because in opening up this avenue, it does open up other issues that we may potentially see, and we feel that the policies that we have written will help facilitate and insulate us against that. I will also state that Bank of America offers a rebate. I know that you guys have heard about purchase card rebates possibly in the past. So essentially what this does is that the quicker that we're able to pay off our balances within the business cycle of the purchase card, we can get cents back into the school district. And by doing that, we'll be able to put those funds back into the school district for district use. So it will be a cost savings.
Is there a cost to this?
Ms. Hanks?
Yes, Mr. Manini.
Being a former educator, isn't that more loopholes for a, say, a concession stand operator to go through, or a drafting to get this paper? It's more work on them, isn't it?
It actually won't be, because right now, in order to actually make a purchase through student activity funds, a requisition purchase order has to be signed by both the sponsor and the principal, and that's actually the document that's taken to the vendor to be utilized. That process will essentially stay the same, except for that item will go to the person or persons at the school site that are responsible for purchasing. One of the things that we've run into is because the school checkbooks are individually signed by the principals, if a principal's out for an extended period of time, if we have a change in leadership, there can be a period of time where they're having to come in and have someone like myself actually make those signatures. I believe the process will actually be the same, if not faster, and they will have access to vendors like Walmart, for example.
I'm just coming from the old school. Thank you.
And they'll still have access to, if it's a purchase that they're not looking at making with the purchase card, they'll still have the availability of issuing a purchase order, sending that purchase order to the vendor, having the item delivered, and then the district cutting the check. And that's taking a lot of administrative paperwork out of the school site. They will no longer be responsible for the reconciliation or preparation of those statements at the school site, which they are now.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to answer any other questions on that initiative. It has been a long-standing audit finding, and I do want to get it off of our books. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chipetti, for those reports. With that, we'll continue on now to our board reports. Mr. Hudeman, any board report?
The only thing I'll mention is I did get to another shoe game. 80 people in the Hogan this time. And I saw Jimmy Sosi a couple days later, and he said after I left there were 135 people before it was over. And I only mention it again because it's just a picture of good social health, that particular activity at Jimmy Sosi's. And anyway, the second thing will mention, I went to the wellness committee meeting today, and that's coming up on the agenda. But that's a strong group. I wish they could meet a little oftener and meet a little oftener and move a little faster. But that's a powerful group in terms of the backgrounds of the members. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hindeman. Mr. Menini?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I went to two Student of the Month schools, one at Lincoln. Their presentation was short and sweet. They called the students in, presented them with awards. There was not very many parents there in the gym. Other one I went to was David Skeet. Mr. Bell was very pleased to see me. I got to tour the school again. We had a luncheon for those students. That means more to them with their parents there, and all of them are there that got these awards. So it was more emphasis on me to be in there to help them out to celebrate their Student of the Month. And those are the only two things I went to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Menini. Ms. Mayalito?
I went to a couple of playoff games within our district, and I haven't hit any more chapter meetings. Went to a couple that they were just parent meetings, but the last probably week I've been struggling with with an illness, so I haven't really been out in my community. That's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayalito. I attended Nohoteshki's chapter meeting, Dalton Pass chapter meeting. Concerns that were brought up about student safety, a couple of issues from parents related to personnel, related all to our superintendent. I will be attending the Church Rock chapter meeting. They had requests our superintendent to attend as well, just give a report. Their meeting is on St. Patrick's Day, unfortunately. The same day I'll be celebrating my birthday, so on March 17th. March 17th at Church Rock Chapter. I believe they said it's at 9 a.m. And they just want a brief update on the situations with our school district. And that's the only thing I have on reports. With the board's permission, I'd like to be excused from this point. My daughter has a high fever. We're going to take her to the hospital. I was on my way that way when I stopped here, up my way up to the hospital, and if we could appoint a temporary chair to the board. To the board wishes, I would like to do that. I would like to appoint Mr. Huneman as a temporary chair for the meeting at this time.
If that's an order, we do have a third officer in our listing. But I'm willing if need be.
Okay, that's all we have for our reports and my report as well. Thank you.
All right, well, that means we'll continue with the agenda. I believe we're down to item J. Am I correct? Approval to amend previous motion on the instrument for evaluation of the superintendent. And that was my item. So let me explain this. When we adopted the instrument last meeting for evaluation of the superintendent, the form or format in that instrument for the various items simply has a rating of satisfactory or unsatisfactory. So it's not very, just doesn't discriminate between levels other than those two. And so what I want to present is simply a little bit more discriminating ranking that has 5 levels: unsatisfactory, up to needs improvement, meets expectations, exceeds expectations, and exemplary. And let me give you these, and then I'll have another comment. There's several levels possible in how this is done. And so the first thing was to simply create 5 levels instead of 2. And then to give a very bare bones, minimal description of each of these levels. And this is very simple. What I want to do, not to complicate things, but maybe looking toward the future, is to say one of the ways that one can do teacher evaluations and superintendent evaluations and so on is a much more detailed description in terms of rubrics for every item in the evaluation. I want to give you a sample of that just for reference. My comment and my purpose was sharing this with you is not to go through it all at this point, but to say this is another kind of fuller development of rubrics and descriptions of the, in this case, the areas and the sub items on this particular evaluation. My comment, my thinking is we're not ready for this at this point, because this needs to be done in advance. This is that point where somebody is going to be evaluated. They should know ideally what they're going to be evaluated on in advance. But I think this is, I provide this as a reference document for the future, and maybe the board would want to move in that direction for another round. I think under our present circumstances, to simply use the 5 levels with a bare bones description is sort of the state of affairs, and I'm going to move in accord with Robert's rules to amend the previous motion by which we adopted the instrument with the two levels, satisfactory and unsatisfactory only, and move to amend that previous motion by changing the ranking to this five levels of ranking, keeping the same content that was in what Mr. Manini presented to us last time. If I may move, as even though I'm acting chair, since I brought up the item.
Therefore, I move that we accept this policy of the 5 levels.
Okay, it's been moved that we.
She's doing her paper.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, roll call.
Yes.
Mr. Heineman?
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito?
Yes.
All right, that motion is passed. Oh, we omitted or missed, apparently, on the agenda, the item of the IEC report. Okay, I apologize for that. It's because I was had the paper flipped over, so skipped the whole page. So we'll have the IEC report at this point.
Good evening.
There it is.
Good evening. My name is Ruby Haley. I'm here representing the Indian Education Committee. I'm a parent. Our president, Ms. Monica, is not here. She had other business to take care of that was urgent. She did ask me to relay the message that we had a meeting concerning the JOM audit, and at that meeting everything was just going in circles as to who approved the audit. So she wanted me to request that the audit be removed since it was never approved by the school board. And then the other thing that she wanted me to inform you about is the dates for the Navajo Language Culture Festival. We have slated May 2nd and 3rd, 2nd being the high school, 3rd being the mid schools. And then also May 9 and 10, 9 being in-town schools, 10 being outlying schools. We also have a budget meeting tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock, here. And then we also have our regular IEC meeting on Saturday at 9 o'clock here in the Student Support Center. We also been notified that we have a work session with IEC Board of Business Office, School Board, Navajo Nation JOM on the 9th from 5 to 7 here in the boardroom also. That is my report this evening. Thank you.
Ms. Haley?
Yes, sir.
I previously asked for a list of members and what schools they represent. I'd like to emphasize that this was 2 weeks ago, and see if we can get that as soon as possible, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manini, for reminding me. We are working on that. I should have that within the next couple days completed, and we will go ahead and email that out to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions from the announcements? Okay, we have listed, in addition to the dates that we were just informed of or presented with the IEC, we have these upcoming events and dates. March 21st, Board of Education meeting at Catherine Miller Elementary. That'll be at 4 p.m. because it's not here. When we meet elsewhere, we usually meet earlier at 4. March 21st, 25th is spring break for the schools, for the students and teachers and many staff, I trust. April 4, Board of Education meeting here. April 18th, Board of Education meeting at Navajo Elementary, again at 4 p.m. up at Navajo. And April 20th, the Region 1 School Board meeting that will be at Central Consolidated School District up Shiprock area, and that's the northwest part of New Mexico school boards. I think the next item.
Mr. Henneman?
Yes.
Can I give you a couple more dates?
Sure.
Tomorrow, 4:45 at Bernalillo High School. Rama High School plays next round of the state playoff. This would be the quarterfinals?
Yes.
Quarterfinals, I believe. They were successful in their game they hosted last Saturday. At 6:30 p.m. at the Star Center, Tohatchee High Lady Cougars will play. They also were successful their first round. And at 8:15 at the pit, the Gallup Lady Bengals will be playing. Bernalillo to Star Center to pit. Busy day. Wednesday, the boys, Gallup High School boys play 3 p.m. in the pit.
Say Gallup.
Gallup High boys. Yeah, Gallup High girls are tomorrow night. Gallup High boys are 3 p.m. against Grants. That's going to be a good game. Grants is the number 2 seed. If the girls' games, if they win on tomorrow, they'll play Thursday. Boys win, they'll play Friday, I believe. And then Saturday will be the finals. Hoping to see several teams in the finals.
Okay.
Thank you.
And some, if not all, I'm not sure if those games are being broadcast, I think, on KTNN. So if you can't get there, you can hear the play-by-play. Right? Okay. Moving on then to item K, I believe, listed as approval of the revised GMCS wellness policy for 2016-2017 for discussion. And Mr. Schuster is standing up. He's the chair of that committee. And if you want to brief us on that, I do want to point out that in your packet, the policy is in our packet. The cover page says 2015-16, but this is the proposed policy at this point, and that committee went through that whole policy this afternoon, step by step, to be familiar with it.
So we're just here to ask for your consideration to review.
Mr. Schuster, we're streaming, so if I can ask you to use a microphone. We can hear you, but the people at home can't, so if you wouldn't mind using a microphone for us. You've got a good booming voice, but it just doesn't reach Crown Point.
Good evening. Thank y'all for having us here this evening. We just met with our Wellness Policy Committee, as Mr. Henneman has mentioned. We have a diverse group, and we have lots of experience and expertise on that group. We have asked that you review the wellness policy. There are some major revisions this year. We presented our wellness policy last May 18th, I believe it was, as the first school in the state of school district in the state of New Mexico to have a complete wellness policy. Department of Health was very excited about what we had done and supported us tremendously. So what I want to bring to your attention tonight is the major revision you're going to see in the wellness policy has to deal with USDA guidelines for nutrition and smart snacks. We specifically have that wording in there now, and I brought my resident expert here this evening, Mr. Cunningham, if you have any questions.
Sir, the proposal we got in our packet does not have the even number pages. We just have the odd number pages.
Mine's back to back.
I have 3, A5, A7.
That's how they.
Is that how they're numbered? No?
That's how it was.
No, there's A4 on the back of A3.
No?
A6, A7.
Yeah.
Not mine.
There you go.
Take yours out.
Who made the copies for you?
I didn't make it.
But you've got, it's on 2 sides.
10 copies.
I know, but there's no, see, there's no, there's 1, 3, 5. It was hard to read. I kept trying to read.
Ms. Manuelito, if you don't mind, I'd like to email that to you first thing in the morning.
Excuse me, sir? What?
Would it be okay if I email you?
She's got a copy.
No, I've got it now.
Okay.
I just have to go back and read.
Okay.
May I take liberty to, since I was fortunate to be able to sit in and attend the meeting today, I've seen this then too. I want to point out, as you go through this, when you get time, there are several, in a sense, levels or components to the different sections. One is things that are required under USDA or school district policy, and then there are suggestions by the committee. But it's full of stuff. It's a powerful set of policies, I think, in terms of addressing many things. Even I just saw the one I had underlined since it came up in recent concerns here about, where did it go? Has to do with maintain a school community program to address teen suicide and depression in a culturally appropriate manner. For example, a number of places where doing things in a culturally appropriate, culturally sensitive manner is included. And some of the suggestions, even though they're not stated as required policy, they really should be done. I mean, they're good, even though they're called suggestions, they're good things. And so I don't know what you want to do this with this, board members, in terms of time to review it, whether we want to talk about it again later. The only comment I have is it does not at this point include specifically I was hoping for in terms of a prohibition on energy drinks. That is in some indirect way, I understand, covered by the USDA standards, but I think we still need it to be explicit. And I would not want to adopt this policy until we have that. I'll write it myself if I need to, until we have it explicitly in there. But it is a very strong document, and I think. And then the question that comes up is, with some of these things in here, is are they being really done, and how do we know? How does the committee know if these things are actually being implemented? How does the administration know? How does the board know? Because they're to be administered, of course, at the school level for the most part. I mean, there are things that happen or aren't to happen at the schools. And so implementation is always still a question. And I will entertain. Go ahead. If you have questions for the gentleman while they're available, or comments. I want to distribute. I just was able to, I was gifted a copy of this today. Mr. Giappetti, you may want to comment on this.
Several weeks ago.
This was a letter that I believe was, if this is not violating internal protocol, this was drafted, I believe, by the Wellness Committee Chairman for use by the superintendent. It's a very good letter, and it says, in effect, I think what we wanted in policy when we discussed it, in the sense that it not only states the banning of consumption and or possession of all energy drinks, but it gives background reasons. Because I remember, Ms. Manuelito, Priscilla, you were saying there's an education. Don't just dump the policy on kids. Give them, explain to them so they understand what's behind this. And this letter really summarizes the research and the effects, the negative effects that have happened with energy drinks and why this has happened. But I believe this was a draft letter. It's not been sent out and implemented as far as I know, but I wanted you to see it because it does have a good summary of what the issue is.
Mr. Hinneman? A good thing to go along with this, the Mexico Activities Association, 3 years ago, it's the year that Miamira High School passed a no energy drink policy. NMAA has a very good video of the Olympic Committee actually did a study of energy drinks and what it does to an athlete, much less a regular student, and how it actually, they found they're lethal because it actually dehydrates you. It does the exact opposite of what you think. You're thinking you're being hydrated by drinking these drinks, where in a sense, because of the caffeine and such, increasing your heart rate, your body having to work harder to pump out the stuff. It's a very good video that goes through not only the energy drinks, but alcohol and other things.
And it's something we've shared with the schools, and it might be good to do, since that was 3 years ago, start up new ongoing.
For all of our schools.
New ongoing.
Do we have,
Go ahead.
do we have people that go into our classrooms or into our schools that teach kids? I know they used to do it for us when I was in school. They talk about drugs and alcohol. Do they still do that within our district?
Yes, in some instances at some schools we have some pilot projects. One is sponsored by the DWI Coalition, JSAC. We have nutrition education folks that go in from the Extension Service from New Mexico State. Our police officers come and speak to our kids sometimes. And we have several different initiatives going on. But Lynn mentioned we would like to get those listed so that we could report back to you and let you know exactly what we're doing at each school.
I know when I go to the JSAP meetings every night when I get a chance to. There was one presentation that an officer did, and I think this is I got notice of the parent meeting through Mrs. Jim Martin here of and Tohatchee that their increase of drugs in their school, and them coming in forms of gummy bears and those rock pops, I think they're called. So us as adults will not see our kids getting high on these things because we're just assuming they're candy. And I think our staff needs to be educated on that. He did an awesome job on that presentation, and there is maybe even distributing to our student council, to our students, the numbers. But there is, I do have it, and I wanted to forward it on to Mrs. Martin, but I didn't have a chance. There is a police officer through the Navajo Nation, which works with the state and sheriff, that you can report drug dealers within our community anonymously, and they'll pick it up, and so it doesn't get nobody in trouble. It doesn't get the kids in trouble. It doesn't get parents in trouble. They do it anonymously, but they start investigating, and I think that's a number we need to give out and pass along, especially to the kids, because they know who they are. They know who these people are, and we just, if they can do it anonymously, not get in trouble, I think we would see a lot more people behind bars and stopping these drugs from hitting our kids, and they're getting younger.
Like,
We can do that and get that implemented, get that word out.
had a very good training at the beginning of the year. Officer Patovich, Gallup Police Department, him and Akison came forward and did a presentation on the new fads, different things that they were seeing. You wouldn't believe it, from the fake tattoos that are laced to the gummy bears like you talked about and other things. Different things they were doing, and some of them were stuff I wouldn't even consider, much less have been creative enough to invent. The other one is we do have our anonymous tip line, and this is what it was intended for, was to bring forth the alcohol, drug issues, violence issues, instead of, I probably have about 120 anonymous tip lines so far, and if you'd ever need a good nights of just hysterical laughing, let me know. I'll be happy to print them for you. From, you know, and most of them are teachers against teachers, you know, well, so-and-so looks at me wrong, and so-and-so was a bully, and I can honestly not think of what the Gallup Police Department think when they get these autonomous tip lines and then have them forwarded to us. This is not a police emergency. This is not a police emergency. But stuff like that, that's there. We have a very good phone. They can leave a message without knowing who it is. You can leave an email. You can leave your address if you want, name and such, or it's 100% anonymous. And it's right on our front, right in the dead center front of our webpage, anonymous tip line. And you can click on it, and it goes straight to the Gallup PD. And then if it's something that the schools, they need to work directly with the schools, they forward them directly to us. So there, it's there.
and we've gotten the word out. It's just not used. Or should I say, not used appropriately.
One of the things I want to say that I appreciate about the committee's work and intent is that it is trying to promote total wellness, not just physical health. You know, like an athlete can be in good condition physically and be pretty unhealthy in certain ways. And so it's talking about physical health, emotional health, social health, talking about students, talking about staff. It really has a sort of comprehensive goal. And at the same time, you know, we know, I think, with our young people and sometimes our older people, obesity is going up. Suicide seems to be going up. Diabetes is going up, not going down. It's going up in our communities. And so, you know, to overcome all the factors that feed into that is not easy. You can write a good policy and chip away at it and hope something starts to kick in gear and really affect those things, but those are not easily. This week, IHS is having a presentation on the research on vegetarian diets and in preventing and countering cancer and diabetes. Some of you might be familiar with the large China study, it's called, some years ago. But, you know, some of us like our shakes, our ice cream. Some of us like our grilled steaks, you know, things that we're used to, and we like them, and we think they're not good. Milk's healthy. We always were taught that growing up. Or meat, good steak is healthy. Well, a lot of the research is still saying that a vegetarian diet is healthier, not that you're going to automatically get cancer if you eat a steak, but statistically the likelihood really correlates with a vegetarian versus a meat, especially a red meat diet. Well, those are, you know, it's not easy to change our habits when we like something, no matter what the book says, no matter what the research has reported. So I think, but what this is doing is trying to not only do certain actions, it's trying to orient students and ourselves to looking at how do we really become healthy in a holistic, you know, total comprehensive way. So I think as soon as we can add a no energy drink thing, I hope we can support that.
That can be added at any time.
Yeah.
You have it for your review, you approve it, it goes into the wellness policy.
Yeah.
I think we should.
Any other comments on this at this?
I mean, what's stopping us from adding that?
Well, I just think we just need something concrete in writing.
Yeah. Just as long as you've approved it, it's something you want.
But this was the discussion item on the agenda, so I don't
This is
think
the discussion, so you can bring a policy at the next board meeting to vote on?
Yeah.
And our wellness policy is a dynamic policy. We're always adding or analyzing and trying to see what it is we need to do to benefit our scholars and staff.
Okay. Well, thank you then. We'll
Yeah, thank you.
may see this on the agenda next time again for
Yes.
further action. All right.
Thank you for waiting with us.
Next item on the agenda is approval of 2016-17 NIMSBA, New Mexico School Board Association Excellence for Achievement Award. Up for discussion, Mr. Chupetti, you might have something on that, or even Mr. Manini.
I have some nominations, and I have a good nomination of Mr. Rick Murphy for our recognition from our district. He's been building schools for us. He's in the community member, and I solely recommend that the three of us can put these words together.
How many are we allowed to recognize?
Oh, no.
We can do one, but then we can pay for additional plaques if we want, is what I read.
That's good.
So if we want to do all of them, all the ones that we received, let's see, there's one, two,
One. The others are scholarship.
oh, those are scholarships.
Just Ryan is the only one we've received.
Do you all have a form attached in your, with that item in your packet?
Yeah, it's the one that we got through the New Mexico Association.
Oh, the one up here.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it was $20 or something.
The scholarship
We can't do.
we can't do.
No.
We cannot do scholarships this year. Because we gave it
We're
out last
ineligible
year.
because we had one last year.
So, do these people submit it theirs?
Well, if they're juniors, they can come back as a senior or say an extra grade. Be a five-year senior. But
We-
those scholarships are null and void.
So we have a nomination there. That would be considered a community member, is that correct?
Yes.
And then we have also here a nomination of an administrator from Mr. Mitchell in this set of
Ryan
paperwork.
Dashner. I also wanted to bring forth the name, Lawrence Andrade. We did recognize him at our last meeting. And Dr. Andrade donates his time to many causes. He's present at every in-town football game, so every Friday night from August till November, he volunteers as a team doctor. He comes to other sporting events, soccer, and volunteers his time, including basketball season, and then he always works in for any student at any area. If there's an emergency situation, he takes them into his practice and works them in just to get them seen and get them healthy. He's taken the time on his own expense to go to specialty sports medicine clinics when that's not his, he's a general practitioner, but he's gone to different seminars and stuff to update on athletic accidents and stuff, and he's always donating his time. And then he, as a practitioner, he takes several students in the guild program and mentors them each year, those that want to go into the medical profession, and has been very instrumental in writing recommendations to get students into the BAMD program at UNM, which I think in my 3 years we've, I believe, had 5 students enter into that program. So just another name to consider.
And does it matter if that's considered a community member or a volunteer? There are 2 categories. I don't see anything says there can't be 2 community members.
Well, we'd have to pay for 2 of these, it
Yeah.
seems like, so.
There was Murphy, what was this gentleman's name?
Dr. Lawrence Andrade. And then they put forward Principal Ryan Dashner.
And then might I suggest, since there were actually several students nominated in here, and on the rotation we can't do a student this year, maybe we could recognize those in some fashion anyway as a board, like some of our other recognitions. Okay, is that what do we have to do with those? Just thinking out loud here.
My other nomination would have been Dr. Bruce Tempest, a former board member. And the only reason I think he's following us probably right now on live streaming. He's still interested in our board. So I'd like to nominate all 4, and we pay for the other 3. I'd like to move that in a motion.
Let me ask for a clarification here. On the agenda, it's listed as discussion.
Yeah.
And action item no in our summary. Do we need to simply move the action till next meeting in that case?
When is our next meeting?
Okay.
21st. Too late. Deadline's March 16th.
Yeah, we have time.
Okay.
Oh, we don't.
Deadline's March 16th, guys.
No, it's April. Deadline is April. That's
Does it require a motion to certify
deadline March
the
16th, yeah.
nomination?
On the form, it says March 16th.
I don't think we need a formal vote, to be honest.
We just need the board president's signature.
Says each district's local school board will choose the recipient through an open nomination process. The exact process for selection will vary according to the discretion of the local board. In that case, I think we could say that the board president can sign the nomination that were submitted.
Yeah.
If we accept that.
Okay.
Right?
That tied a sign for all four. We'll be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we got some things in the hopper there. The next item on the agenda is the functions of the public relations coordinator, who is present. That was my item, and my thinking there, board members, is simply that we, for instance, sometimes during our meetings get some overhead, some slides of photos that the public relations coordinator or her associates take. Some really good photos, and there are a number of things that we know that office does. The one thing that's missing to me is taking two things that are related. One is taking those same things and sending them out to the media more, doing more PR to the media for the community. Our websites at times, our individual school websites sometimes have very interesting things, but people in general are not likely to look at those websites unless it's their own kid's website. Their own kid goes to that school, their own child, their own student. But I used the photos as one example because we've seen some marvelous photos of things. And what happens, I think, is that there are things going on at times at the schools that are good things. And I don't expect our public relations coordinator to be running around helter-skelter, trying to discover all of those on her own. But I think the principals and some of the other staff, if they know something's of interest, they could feed that to the public relations coordinator, who could then disseminate it to our local media more fully. I think, we have enough negative things that come up that we're concerned about, we hear about or are told about, or that people make up about the district, about the board, about whatever, and we need that positive thing known as well, and there are a lot of positives. And I'm just saying, I don't know what the board expectation is, but to communicate not a formal job description change, I don't think that's necessary, but I'm just expressing that I think that the public relations coordinator has some good stuff already that could get disseminated more widely, and people could feed her, feed that office more things as a funnel or as a conduit. That was my thinking, because I read in I stumble onto something going on at school, great, but it lets us put out let's publicize ourselves, because there are a lot of good things in this many schools.
Mr. Human? I don't know if this mic works or not. I'll get closer and swallow it. The New Mexico School Board Association would like to have those information faxed to them so they can put it out in their newsletters. One thing that crosses my mind right now is coming up in May, you're going to have the great debate between the 2-3 middle schools, and it's been going on for some time, and we know about it, but let's spread our joy, and maybe somebody else can catch the idea. So the New Mexico School Board Association would like to have that also.
Ms. Manuelito.
I know that for myself, I go to the website and I download everything and I put it on my Facebook account website. There's stuff like child abuse prevention. I'll print the flyers and put them up. The one that the long range transportation plan at Rama, the youth art show that's going to be happening, the blood drive. I continue to put those out just for information's sake to my community also. But I think, Mr. Chipetti, I don't know if you could ask the principals that we represent maybe to email us if they want us to be there at events. And give them our emails individually. I mean, I think that's something that we would like to. I would like to know more of what's going on within my schools. I may not hit every single one of them, but I'm going to Rama. What is it, tomorrow?
Yes.
But I think those kind of events are very important for us to be at to support them. So if you could pass that message along, sir, it would be appreciated.
Happy to. Terry's got some great things going along those lines ever since you're talking, Mr. Hinman. Terry, if you'd like to expand on some of the stuff we talked about, like Facebook, Twitter.
I don't do either one of those.
Naps.
Good evening, board. Who's the chairman? Mr. Heineman. Chairman Heineman. You missed our slideshow tonight, but we'll save it for you.
Yes, Ms.
It'll be
Fraser.
posted tomorrow morning. There's a
for the parents? Did you do it for
no,
the people
I didn't get a chance to do it for. There was hardly anyone in the audience. So we are working on looking at a new platform on our website. So we've been doing a lot of investigation in those lines, not only with the company that we're doing business with, but exploring other options. And then the Facebook thing will morph from that. We are going to put out a push-out Facebook page where we can push out these fun events. I mean, I'm sitting at events sometimes, and I think, God, if I could just get this out fast enough. And I think that finally Facebook is going to be a reality for us. We have a actual documented system that went to principals and staff about timelines, Joan's timeline to get it on the agenda, our timeline, a 2-week timeline to get it covered. And I do have Vanessa, who is part of our team up front. Every Friday, she looks at every school's website to see what's coming up the next week in order to keep us posted there. I know that principals have 142 things on their plate, and sometimes us being the next one sometimes doesn't happen. So I'll shoot out emails to principals almost on a weekly basis. Do you have this? Do you have anything like that? We are expanding our radio coverage. We have inquired and got a quote from Millennium Media, which will entail the KYAT station. We could do that as a full package, and I think that that's going to be a valuable tool. We will start this after the next board meeting, in which we'll have a budget adjustment there to help us pay for that. And then, so things are picking up as we go along. I've been trying to send you guys the events that are happening and provided you with a full bracket for the New Mexico State basketball tournament. Everyone's interested in that. But there are a lot of great things going on in the district, and sometimes we don't have the manpower to cover them all, but I encourage principals to send me pictures through their mobile devices so that we can get those posted. Behind you are great art pieces from the 4th graders at Rocky View. It is magnificent artwork that children can do. And in the back this week, we have the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders from Lincoln Elementary, where many of them were here to get recognized for Student of the Month tonight. But we'll try to adjust our schedule and get as many people recognized next time as possible. Are there any other questions for me this evening?
Terry?
Yes.
I would like to say thank you for the emails you sent out to us. I appreciate them greatly. And also, these nominations that we received for, like what Lynn was mentioning earlier, I think there's 3 here. Is there a way we can just recognize them here within our district and through the New Mexico School Board Association?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because if they're highly nominated by, I don't know if it's their teachers or principals, I'm not sure who nominated them, but I think we should at least try to recognize them at some point.
And upon your request, Ms. Manuelito, I invested a heavy amount of fundage in frames so that we could frame our certificates. And I would ask the board if they could come together to approve a process where those are signed by the president beforehand so that we can have them framed to give away. It's kind of, one night they got taken back, and then we had to deliver them. And the other 2 nights, I've just given them the frames in the foyer out there. So
How about
if the
you
board,
just put board member? And one of us could.
We
Whoever
could.
You could contact and something.
The thing about it is we would like that at least a week ahead of time. We run 2 weeks ahead of time on recognitions and board meetings, and then that way, if something comes up, you know, we can do it real quick. I would like to remind you that Mr. A.J. Starkovich and Niles Thomas will be honored tomorrow night at City Council, and the CYFD and A.J. will be on the Barbara Stanley show Wednesday. So
is the Facebook page up already?
no, it's still being
There's one up that I saw.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of investigation. I'm leaning towards maybe might be a union page. I kind of look at the pictures there. They may have created that to get their news out, but ours would be similar, but a little different. Oh, okay. So it's I can't find out who actually
Yeah, I
runs
saw it,
that.
and I was like, I didn't know we had a. Okay, well, at least I know we don't. It's not ours.
Not yet.
It's
We'll
not
look
official.
forward to it.
Oh yeah, we'll.
Well, I appreciate what Terry does, and I talked with her about this a week or two ago, and I still think with all of the good stuff that's happening, there's this one little corner yet, and that's getting more out to the media. I think that thing with the cat there would be a nice picture for one of the next releases. And my thinking, I said this to Terry, and I think I said it also to Mr. Chiappetti, principals and staff nowadays a lot of people have phones with good cameras in them. They see something going on, kids studying really hard at their desk might be important, but it doesn't make any action shot. But when something is going on, if they can just see that and be tuned to it and say, hey, let's grab this photo and send it to Terry, and Terry sends it out, because the sports section is big because it's physical action. It makes good interest shots. Classrooms are harder to do that with, but that's what we need to find. And I don't care if it's a hula hoop contest or if this thing is going on at City Council honoring a student and the media isn't all there. Maybe grab those where we can. But I think staff needs to support it. Like I say, I don't think it's just Terry running around crazy to find all these things, but if we can get oriented to each school, even publicizing their students, and even if it's a lab, something dissecting something sometimes even those things make good shots. Well, that's enough.
So just to let you know that I've seen a big swing in momentum in the way that people interact with our office now for about the last 4 months, and it's picking up speed. And yeah, we really want that to happen. And then it's kind of like one of those what you wish for things. When it all starts coming in from all 35 schools, it's going to be quite a ride. Yeah. So we look forward to that.
Terry?
Yes, ma'am.
When I went on my business on my computer at work, when I go to click on, because I was so excited, I meant to tell you this when you were doing that graduation hat. Last year graduation. I can't open them on my computer. So I tried my laptop at home. I still can't open. Is there a special?
I believe that we no longer have the hats photo album.
I know, but even now, because I went to the pictures. If I click on it, I don't know if I need to download a different. How
maybe an updated Adobe Flash could be.
I have Adobe on there, but I don't know why the pictures won't open. Because I wanted to look at them.
Yeah, I have a disc of them. I could replicate that disc for you. That was interesting.
Well, I just didn't want. If I'm having that problem, I don't know how many parents or other people are having that.
I'll look into that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please take this as support and encouragement, even
Thank
though
you,
we're
sir.
trying to add on to your load.
Sorry.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, board members, the next 3 items are major topics in themselves, and I'm not sure that you want to spend much time tonight on them touch on them, and then maybe they can become old business continuing next meeting. Item M, we covered. Item N, family and community engagement, is in your packet as a copy of a bill that was introduced in the state legislature this last session, and it's called a joint memorial requesting the Public Education Department, New Mexico PED, we call it, and local schools to establish family and community engagement programs in school districts. And why this caught my attention is because of the discussion we had on board goals, where we had given some attention to the idea of helping increase parent involvement. And I thought this was a really excellent proposal. It was passed by the Senate. It was passed, forwarded with no objection. I think it was unanimous. But what happened is, with the end of the session, before it could get to the governor for to be signed, it timed out. I mean, it didn't make it just because of the timing. Hopefully it'll get reintroduced. But the neat thing about it is it recognizes not just parent involvement, but total family and community engagement. And it has some real specific, helpful points in it about how that might happen and how schools can have policies and practices to implement that. And one of the things I think we recognize sometimes in some of our family backgrounds is that family is not just the mother and the father. It can be grandparents and uncles and aunts and extended family terms that are doing a lot with kids and for kids. And when I was a principal, sometimes I'd get grandparents come in trying to deal with a kid, and they weren't the parent, and there were certain legal restrictions. I couldn't share all the information with them because they weren't the legal parents. But in traditional extended family terms, they were supporting and caring about their grandkids. And that happens in a number of cultural backgrounds where you get extended family and then the community level as well. So I thought this really is a guide to helping us implement in a fuller fashion the idea we mentioned about parent involvement. And so I don't know if you have any comments or questions at this point. I think we could look at using this as a basis for a policy for the district. But I don't know if you've had time to go ahead, Mr. Manini.
Looking at the time frame, Mr. Human, and you've got 3 more up for discussion.
Yeah.
I would like to recommend that these will be postponed
Okay.
to the next meeting.
You want to move to table that until next meeting?
All 3 of them, I guess it's left, if that's possible.
I think that's possible.
The reason why is you've got 2 board members that are not here.
Yeah.
I'd like to have their input also.
Okay. I think that's a legitimate motion. May I make a comment on it? If I don't always know how much time other members have to read things and so on, because some of you have full-time jobs and are like me, they're just busy. And but this one we had in the packet on item O, integration of Navajo and Indian studies in the curriculum. I just distributed copies of that one before the meeting, I believe, so it wasn't in the packet, but you should have that now, and I think it was also emailed to you at one point, so if you get time to look at that. That one, I think we can make very good pedagogical arguments for the need for integrating things that connect more students' identity. Also, though I know there's going to be some opposition or questions about that from certain angles, so we need to, think about that one carefully. On revitalization of Navajo language, we don't have any specific proposal. It's just that I mentioned it from time to time, and the question to me is, how do you do that? How do you revitalize a language? A school can't do it by itself. A board can't do it by itself. It's got to come in conjunction with a desire on the part of parents and students and so on, but certainly I think we can see what we can do to encourage it and support it in as full a way as possible. And I have down here revitalization of Navajo language, but again, we face that circumstance with some other language backgrounds in our communities as well, in terms of language loss. And so, but if you give some thought to, that. And the other thing with these, which didn't get put on the didn't get put this way in the agenda is to take these. I think what we should do with these, and we could maybe even change your motion, Mr. Manini, to refer these to the administration for study and recommendation.
Okay.
I think they should be looking at this also and for us and come back to us with what they see in terms of not only the ideal and the idea, but implementation, realities, what are the considerations and the effects of what needs to be dealt with. If that would be acceptable, I would prefer
I think that's a good idea, Lynn.
I know at one time during the beginning of when I became a board member, one suggestion I did make, and I don't know how far it went within our district, to helping us bridge that gap between, again, this would probably fall under families and community engagement, is having our elders go through the background checks and to go through the training or whatever they need to go through to be foster grandparents within our school district. I know the BIA schools do that, and it's a wonderful relationship that the kids have. The grandmothers or grandfathers are there talking to our children within their native tongue, and it's something that it's a lot more, of course there's another hand also within the classroom for our students, but I don't know if anybody's ever researched that or looked at that, because I know they have a partnership with Navajo Nation with foster grandparents also to help.
Do I need to?
Do I hear a motion, Mr. Manini, to refer N, O, and P to the administration for study and recommendations?
It's listed as discussion item.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
So you've discussed it and referred it to me.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Moving right along then to letter R, item R, approval of a one-time payment to qualifying GMCS contract employees for retention addenda. And in the packet, there is information on that one. If I can get down here to find it. Yeah, there it is. Let me start this out for just a minute in terms of why I pulled this for an action item, the questions that were in my mind, and you may have others. We have had at least one of our board members, I think more than once, indicate the desire to be able to pay teachers more in our salary schedule. Not everybody is knocking down the doors to come because of our salary schedule, I'm sure. I had two concerns or questions in terms of it not just being a quick consent item. One is there are no dollar amounts, particularly that I saw in terms of, I thought there was a place once, but then I didn't see it, so that just fuller information that way. And the other is just a consideration of other options. In other words, do we want to just pay people more now, or do we want to use this for adding some positions even yet this year? Because we've heard, even in the Wellness Committee today, they were talking about the goal of getting our nursing ratio up, the number that's recommended, the number of nurses per how many students, 1 to 750 students, I think it was. So, I mean, there are places where we could add more personnel along with boosting our present personnel. I mean, these are options, and so I thought it's fair to raise those questions. So, who wants to go first here?
The one thing I would like to, before I turn it over, is the reason we're doing it this way is we add personnel, or we give a percentage raise that is continual. I mean, you look at Farmington, who's a $2 million deficit, Las Cruces in a deficit, APS, God, what was it, 20 million deficit, because they gave 5% raise, and then a 3% raise, and then a 2% raise, and then the economy tanked, and they can't handle it. Well, we hire personnel, we give raises with it that are continual. We know our economy is it's kind kind of a nice pun, tanking, since oil and gas. We're getting towards an empty tank. So our unit value is not going to go up. We're being told whatever you have now, conserve. This is something that I'm going to let them explain that is something we can do for our present employees now, and it's something that's non-recurring. And I'll let Giovanna and Mike explain how we got to this and where we are.
Board of Education, we're excited to present this to you. We hope that you are, and we know that the staff across the district, the contracted staff, are excited for this item. At the bottom of the addenda action item, or addenda executive summary, it gives a little description underneath financial information that talks about how we got to this point. I think the lead-in by Superintendent Chipetti was great, but how we got here kind of goes along the lines of what our bond representatives talked about earlier on. We have been able to be financially efficient over this last year and a half, and we have been able to reduce our liabilities. And as a result of that, along with incoming impact aid money and less of a need to cover the liabilities associated with grant management, some of the problems we've had, we've been able to come to a point where we feel comfortable in approximately, I know Giovanna doesn't let me talk in approximates, but she'll give you specific numbers, but we feel comfortable even with the economic outlook as far as funding in public education in Mexico of about a $2.8 million amount that we feel can be distributed at this time to our employees who have not had raises and who have not had a significant increase in pay for many years. This, again, we feel comfortable doing it as a one-time at this point because of the economic outlook with oil and gas at this time with the state of New Mexico. As Mr. Chipetti mentioned, that we will not likely see much of an increase, if any, in the unit value this year. And so, again, this is an opportunity that we have now. We feel comfortable with it. We will continue to become more efficient. And as we have these opportunities, the goal is to not only increase retention of our employees, but to reward them for their efforts in their teaching and in their duties in the district.
And just to be clear, so this in effect is like a bonus at the end that doesn't affect the scale from next year. They're back to the same
Correct.
level.
This is
no
a safer way of doing it. As Mr. Chipetti said, it doesn't create a future liability for us. We still have the ability to fill the needs of the district as far as staffing. We have built-in flexibility for that, so we can make sure that we meet the needs of students. But again, this is above and beyond that. So.
Ms. Manuelito's hand went up first, I think, and then Mr. Manini.
I have a couple of questions, sir.
Giovanna, I know you're still.
Where is this funding coming from? Is my first question. Who would be receiving these bonuses? And what are the amounts of the bonuses that will be received?
I'll let Giovanna talk about the specific amounts, but the language in your executive summary explains it'll be a 4% for all contracted employees except superintendent contracts.
It's my turn? I'll throw this at Mike since he's right there. Is any of this money can be used in the following year?
Yes.
As incentives? Or
Well,
disputed?
it is an incentive.
Well, I'm talking
we
about...
hope that next year there's...
I'm talking about raising a step in the salary.
Because then you create a future liability given the unit value. That's why we're concerned about making it a raise, because we're fortunate that we've been efficient, but future outlook of oil and gas is bleak. And so
The Senate Bill 2, which was the funding that was passed, is going to give our staff a $2,000 raise next year, level 2 and level 3 teachers. No, wait a minute. Brian, can you clarify? Oh, okay. So it's going to move tier 2 to 42,000, tier 3 to 52,000. So if you have a level 2 teacher that's between 40 and 42, they're going to get bumped and 50 to 52 is going to get bumped.
And where is that money to come
That's
from?
coming from the state of New Mexico.
Okay.
That's in law. We have to do that.
They have to do that. Meaning we don't need this money we don't have to hold this money
Right.
to be able to accomplish that
Right.
next year.
They say the money is in there for next year. Now, the problem is when they went to the 3-tier system, the money was in there the first year. And then after that, it wasn't there, and it's 100% on the districts. That's been our bone of contention.
You know, when I asked, I don't know how many meetings ago, like 3-4 months ago, I asked if we could give increased wages. People said there's no money. How are we going to do that? Now there's magically this money that we're going to give bonuses to who? You said so that's all contracted Gallup McKinley County Schools. There's no, because I don't want to hear later on, oh, we gave money to just the schools that improve grades, or
It's everybody.
it's people that are, I know there's certain things that come up later on and you're like, well, we didn't approve that. We approved this. And that's why I want to know those things, and where's this funding coming from?
This is Manuelito. I'll answer a couple of questions. I'll turn the mic over to Giovanna. One of the things that, like you said, where was that money before? In our projections, when we do budgeting, we have to make sure that we do cover all our future liabilities. There have been higher liabilities in the past because of some of the inefficiencies in the district. At this particular time, after making sure that we can take care of those liabilities, we're in a position where we have excess. It's not something we could have predicted before because we had to make sure that we didn't have anything to pay out for other expenses. And so it's something that we would find out now and not, 4 months.
So teachers, janitors,
every single
cooks,
contracted
secretaries,
employee.
we're talking, as long as they have a contract.
Cooks that are part of the district, not SFE cooks. Every bus driver, even though they received a raise, substitutes would not, because they're not a contracted employee, but every other person in the district that receives a contract would receive 4% if they've been here for 2 years, and a 2% if they've been here just this year. One-time distribution. So we were very careful. We knew that you would ask that question because of the bus drivers. And so we took a lot of time, along with negotiations with the union, to make sure the language was clean so that nobody was excluded that is currently working for the district that's going to finish out the year, to make sure that nobody's excluded and we don't have any of those situations that we discussed earlier. So you can name any employee that receives a contract, and they would fall into the category of receiving this one-time distribution.
In terms of amounts, a teacher receiving $40,000 a year, 4% would be $1,600.
Correct.
Is the amount they would get.
If they've been here for
Somebody
if they've been here for 2
$30,000 would
years.
get $1,200, right?
Yes. Only if they've been here for 2 years, get 4%.
Oh, okay.
This current
There were
year, if
some
they
strings
started
attached.
this year,
Right.
then that
And it's
teacher would get
2%.
2%. So this is a retention. We call it a retention.
We're just
incentive.
discussing this right now.
No, this is this was a consent because we didn't know we were allowed action items, so we just put it as consent.
No, I think you motioned to.
No, it's
an
to
action?
make an
It's an
action.
action.
It is action now.
I would really like to hear, Mr. Hideman, is there a deadline for this? I mean, can we ask the other board members that are not present? I think it's something.
You have 1,800 employees waiting for your action.
I don't have problems with the idea when we say people haven't had an increase in their schedule or their salary, except for maybe a few, like the bus drivers, but overall, for a number of years, what's here is not in itself a problem to me. The question in my mind still is, what the discussions we've had lately, like adding a cultural counselor at Theroux, or some of these things, and we're not acting on those, it seems. Why haven't we had a proposal if we have money to address those things as well? And you can't do two things with the same dollar, I realize that, but this is what I'm trying to sort out in terms of choices and other needs. because no matter what we do anytime in this business, there's always another need, it seems. And so that, that's the
As I mentioned before,
decision we're faced
we have
with.
been conservative with this amount because we know that we have other needs in the district that we can still take care of. Cultural counselor, for example, we've already advertised for one of those.
To the tune of about how much for the rest of the year? I mean, what do you have for not, that's...
We don't want to employ somebody just for the rest of the year. So if we use this money to employ somebody for the rest of the year, we want them to continue next year. So we're going to assume we have the money next year. Well, this is the money we had at cash on hand that we were using to cover the, if a grant money was denied to pay for it.
Reimbursements.
We had to keep cash in hand for, if the federal government's not on the same fiscal year we are, so sometimes they send us money in July and August. Well, the problem is we have to have cash in hand because if not, we're using next year's budget. We've kept a large amount of cash on hand. So this is money we have right now that we can say we can free up. We can free up. I won't have that money next year to free up. So if I hire somebody between now and the end of the year, if we want to offer them a contract next year, it has to be
I understand and I appreciate the point. I think that if we were to employ somebody now in whatever position, that's not just for this year, that's a position we'd want to sustain next year.
Correct.
But I think the answer to Mr. Manini's question about whether the money could be used next year was affirmative. That was yes, so that if we did take some of this and put it into, say, a new position or filling a vacant position maybe, that a certain amount of that should be then maybe available next year if that's what it was earmarked for.
We already have the funding to cover vacant positions, so that's already taken care of. Again, this is above and beyond the needs of the district.
So the board may have heard me mention a couple of times about the lawsuit that was going on through the Washington district, through the Impact Aid office, and that had really stopped any Impact Aid payments coming to the district for an extended period of time. And it wasn't just us, it was all Impact Aid districts were kind of on halt for a period of time. So with the resolution of that lawsuit, it was administratively adjudicated through the Impact Aid office. When that actually happened, they finally started making those prior year distributions. We actually received an FY11 distribution of $335,000, and I'm just going to kind of round these off instead of going to the cents. For our FY12, we received $3.2 million. For our FY13, we received $2.1 million, and that's just in the operational fund. Now, remembering that the state does take 75% credit for those payments as part of the Impact Aid policy in the state of New Mexico, that still leaves the district with $1.4 million that we have been waiting for an extended period of time, that we have now received back payment. We are still waiting for final payments for FY14, FY15, and FY16, and those are all being watched and being monitored. We will not budget or plan for those funds until they're actually received. So we're not, that's not part of consideration. The other issue is that temporary cash transfers that you tend to see me pull in front of you at the end of the year that we have as far as covering those grants that need to be reimbursed to the district. We were sitting at $9.8 million pending reimbursement from various grantors or grantees. We are now at $7.1 million. So we've been able to decrease that substantially. And then in looking back at the recoding, just out recoding that has had to have been done, we've discussed many times about unallowable expenditures or denial of items. In 11-12, we had $477,000 in items denied. Last year, we had $56,000. Is that perfect? No, but we are getting much, much better, and it's because we are being much, much stricter. So again, it's being conservative. It's finally getting those Impact Aid dollars that were due to the district. It's kind of an opportunity that we will not likely have again.
So where are you guys? I keep hearing people talking now about us having traditional counselors Where are we getting the funding for those individuals?
Title VII, the Title VII budget initially had 5 people for the Navajo language and culture support teachers. Upon my first day of being put on administrative leave, the 2 vacancies that were being advertised for were taken out. One created a Navajo language and culture teacher position in Navajo, from my understanding. The other one was sitting there. You guys, we've been talking about the need, so that Title VII position was on the books. It's the same salary as a teacher. We have put it into that position to get immediate.
So 2 is going to cover the whole district.
We're starting with 1 for the rest of this year, and then in the budget process for next year, we're going to be looking at others. We're starting this year. We had a vacant position that needed to be filled, and we felt it would be better utilized being the counseling position from the traditional angle rather than the support teacher.
So I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it's the way to elicit a clarification. I'm assuming you're recommending this at this point, and you seem to be speaking in support, as opposed to using any of it, for example, to add 1 or more security guards at Crown Point.
Those are items that we can look at in the budget process. That's something we can look in the budget process for next year, because that will be a reoccurring expense. We have to look also, we negotiated last year with McFuse, and they agreed to take a gamble this year and state, you know, we said we didn't really have money to put on the table this year, but if we got one of the back payments of impact aid, they would take a gamble of using it for the raises. Well, we've received some of that impact aid. So even if you vote no today, based upon last year's negotiated contract, the union's going to get that money. Then they will decide who it goes to. So we met this year with McFuse to say we've received that amount. We have a little bit more that we can give to you. So actually we're getting more to our employees. And let's negotiate how it's given out. So we can at this time say we're going to give 4% to everybody that is contracted, besides me.
For 2 years.
On a 2-year, thank you. And 2% to all first-year employers that are contracted, and run with that. Or if you vote no, the money then, the amount that we have pledged in the negotiations goes to the union, and then they decide where it goes.
Okay. 2 things, and I'm just being candid here. The part I don't get, there's a part I get and a part I don't get. The part I don't get is, why are you talking about next year? I mean, we're not done with this year yet, and we have needs. Several times it's been referenced, well, if we do this toward next year, why not now? That's a part I'm not getting. I'm just being straight about that. If, for example, as we've heard, we have concerns about lack of police protection, security at several of our campuses, why don't we act now to try to hire security people there? Not wait till next year.
We can look within our budgets to see if money is applicable there and do stuff like that. But again, when I visit out there, and Mr. Ferguson's here, he can speak for Crown Point. You know, when we talk to the Navajo Police Department, when we talk to the security guard that's there, the day I was there, it was Anthony, who used to be a security guard with me, who's the supervisor, and he says everything's kosher, everything's good. Well, then we have a parent perception that's different. Are we going to spend money to change a perception, or is it actually needed? So there's stuff we have to look into more, and if it's actually needed, we're going to come up with the money this year to do so.
And we've done that throughout the year, I want to add. There's been schools that have requested more security guards, and we've looked at the need and determined yea or nay.
Example was through
What
high
happens
school when they were
continuously,
broken
there's a
into
process for
multiple
that.
times. You know, we even hired security to be there at night, pending that time where we had all the issues going on. So when there is a definite need, we will work to fulfill the need. Right now, there's a perception, and we haven't got
I'm going to say this because I understand where your staff is coming from, but if there's parents, not just one, that are saying that they need to stop the drugs and stop the 21-year-old people from coming onto campus, if that was something that was, okay, we can take care of it, handle one day, something, but if they're continuing to come in, then either your staff is sugarcoating it, or the parents are really trying to ask for our district's help, and we're not listening. And again, it's not just one parent. We got to help where we need to help them, and stop. I mean, of course they're going to say there's no problem, everything's okay, because the principal doesn't want to look bad. But that's in everywhere. Everybody's going to say, no, nothing's wrong, everything's fine, but there's something wrong. It's not just one complaint, Mr. Chipetti. There's multiple complaints, and I think I understand that we want our teachers, our employees to get more money. I really appreciate that this money's there. But for me, with this money, I would like to see the total amount that we're going to be spending, and I would like to know the other board members' opinions, and because I think it's important that we're transparent. Right now, this is the kind of letters we get, but we don't, somewhere it bites us, and I don't want to get bit again, and I want to know the total amount that we're going to be spending, and how many 4% contracted people do we have? How many 2%? I don't want names. I just want to know, and how many are we going to pay out? I think that's information that we can give out to and be more transparent about it. That's how I feel. I think we should get that and those numbers, and then also, if they can wait 2 weeks till our next board meeting, I don't think it's going to kill anybody. And then also to get our other board members' opinion.
I also have a process question. And if it's my ignorance, so be it. I'm not understanding the negotiation process here in terms of that the board, as I'm led to believe or assumed, when it comes to negotiations for the next round, the next year, that in some ways is between the board and the union.
No, sir. The process is it's the district negotiates with the union. We then come to a tentative agreement that they take back to their membership for ratification, and then we take that tentative agreement to you. So the negotiation is actually done by the district. Then it goes to the board for approval. McFuse has taken this tentative agreement to their membership. They had a membership meeting last Saturday. They did ratify it, and that's why we're bringing it to you today. If they didn't ratify it, our first order of agenda today would be to pull it off the agenda.
Okay, because, again, this is where I guess it's learning that I have to do, because it's different here than any place I've been before outside of New Mexico. The negotiation was done, even when it was done by administration, is done on behalf of the board. So it's ultimately between the board. The administration represents the board in those negotiations. So I would have expected here that the administration would have come and said, we've got this $2.8 million. What we would think are doing with it is to use it for teacher salary increases or bonuses, whatever you want to call it. And so that process is not what I'm used to. And that's part of my befuddlement, I guess, in terms of how this was done.
I think we should be involved. I think we should be involved in those discussions, and maybe even a parent, or maybe a staff, teachers. Maybe they see a need somewhere, and instead of us being the last to know, and okay, we need your approval. I think we should be involved in those discussions.
Well, it depends on what the legal arrangement is with the union in some ways. I mean, just I know what my assumptions are from previous experience, but that has not been in the state of New Mexico, and we know New Mexico is different in some ways. And but I think that.
Well, if we can be involved, I want that written. I mean, who I want that written out. I want to see that policy that we can't be involved in those decisions, or we can't be part of that discussion. I mean, we're not asking anything else that we do. I mean, we have to be accountable for the monies that are in this district. That's our ultimate position as a board member, and I think we should be involved in these discussions still.
I don't have a copy of the negotiated agreement with me this evening to see where that speaks to anything. What's the board's pleasure? Those of us who are here, we can act on it. We can table it till next meeting, I suppose, and keep everybody on edge.
I really want, I would like to make a motion to table this, to have our other two board members that are not here have their input, and to get those numbers. I would like to really see the numbers on how many employees within our district are, well, I was mentioned at one time was 1,800 employees are waiting for this decision. So we should see 1,800 employees on this document when we get it.
Okay, that's your motion?
That's my motion.
To table this item with a request for some more specific dollar numbers as identified. Any other comments or questions? Roll call.
Mr. Heineman?
Yes.
Mr. Manini?
No.
Thank you.
I think that means it's taken as a vote of 2-1 and it passes. Okay, so we'll see that on the next agenda. Thank you. We now have just the future board agenda items. Anyone have items they want to mention at this time?
I would like to have a report on, I don't know how we can, it was a concern brought up with our seniors of graduation. If someone could just verify that everybody's on track. That's a real scary situation that happened in Theroux, and I just hate to see other parents or students go through that. Just have that confirmation that all of the seniors are prepared. Also, the other thing is maybe even, I know we haven't had a report on special ed, so maybe a report from EDC would also be helpful too, just because we did hear again some concerns about 504s and stuff like that within schools.
So you want to report on 504 also?
With special ed?
504 is not special ed?
Oh, yeah, yes. Oh.
Okay, any other items? Mr. Manini, anything you want to mention?
No, sir.
Okay. We have a number of items carrying over from this meeting and so on, so they'll get communicated to the superintendent and confirmed. So I believe we're ready for Mr. Manini's final motion.
I move that this meeting be adjourned. And Mr. Chipetti, there's some questions I need to know about graduation places. It says gym, which gym, and so forth.
Which school?
Central?
Miamir High School gym, I'm going to assume. I will check on that for you.
Please?
They normally use Miamir as gym. I will check on that.
Can we have where we volunteered to go?
It's on here. You should have got that yellow sheet.
Oh, sorry. Never mind.
Meeting, let's see, did we have a roll call on the adjournment?
Not yet.
We all voted yes? Meeting? I declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Amen.
You need some, Mr. Chipetti, you need some dates